My name's Hazel Blears, and the woman that I've chosen who has been an absolute inspiration to me is Sheila Delaney. I used to be a Member of Parliament until last year, and I've been a government minister. I've been involved in local politics, national politics, international politics. I've chosen Sheila Delaney as my inspirational woman because I think she was a real fighter. She was born in 1938 in Broughton in Salford. She came from a poor background. She failed her 11 plus 4 times. She finally got 5 O-levels as it was then, and yet she became a world-class writer. She wrote the world-famous play, A Taste of Honey, which for its time, written in 1958, was incredibly modern, and she tackled some of the most difficult issues in our society even today. It dealt with issues like teenage pregnancy, homosexuality, mixed-race marriages, aspiration, ambition, being working class in a very difficult environment. And they actually filmed the play, when it became a film, in and around my street where I was brought up in Salford. So I just feel like I have a really close bond with an amazing woman. And the city of Manchester, where I worked for a large part of my working life, are absolutely in my heart. What I want to do is to carry on trying to make a difference for young people, to give them ambition, a decent job, a great future, but also to care for our older people too. I think we are a fantastic place in Greater Manchester. We're full of love and compassion, but we've got a hard head as well, and we know you have to have a head and a heart to really make a difference.
I'm Jill Haves, and the woman who's been a great inspiration to me is Olive Shapley. I've seen a lot of references to her in Didsbury and not known who she was, and so I decided to find out about her, and actually I'm really glad I have, because she's a very, very interesting woman. Despite the fact she was born in London, Olive Shapley spent a lot of time in Manchester. She came up at the age of 24. Olive Shapley was in charge of Children's Hour at the BBC, and she was expected to provide 5 one-hour programmes a week, including 2 full-length live plays, which I was really surprised about. Back in the 30s and 40s in Manchester, Olive Shapley also worked as a radio broadcaster, and she went out to people's houses and sort of interviewed them in their homes, and apparently the Londoners were very upset about the northern accents, and they said they couldn't really understand what people were saying, so I thought it was quite interesting. And she increasingly allowed more and more people who were disadvantaged to have a lot of airtime, and I think she was kind of a fighter for the common person, really. Olive Shapley also formed the Rose Hill Trust in Didsbury, where I live. She opened her house to unsupported mothers and their babies, and then after that had finished, she decided to open her house to the Vietnamese boat people, refugees from Hong Kong and Vietnam. She was very charming. Everybody who spoke about her really thought she was a lovely, lovely person. She combined that with a lovely sense of fun, and I think that's a fantastic way to be with my family, with my students, with my community in general, really. So I thought that was very, very inspiring.
I'm Nicola Torkington, and the woman who's been a great inspiration to me is Sylvia Pankhurst. She's the second daughter of Emmeline and Richard Pankhurst, and she's said to be the inspiration for Emmeline Pankhurst setting up the Women's Social and Political Union. She's Greater Manchester born. She's a talented artist and creative artist actually, and she used a lot of her skills to promote the Women's Social and Political Union. In spite of studying at the Royal College of Art, she put that career behind her and used her talents to create all kinds of social change for the better. She really was passionate about making sure that women had an equal footing. It included giving women access to buildings that they weren't previously allowed to go into, and in particular helping mothers get the support they needed, both in the UK and in Africa. And this was something that she championed throughout her life and made a real priority. Sylvia's largely an unknown character. It's her mother, Emmeline, who's the one that everybody talks about. But what I found out through learning about this lady is that she was really the inspiration behind her mother setting up the Women's Social and Political Union. And I'm really intrigued by these sort of fire starters who don't always get the limelight, but they really make things happen. Celebrating the achievements of women in general is something that I'm keen to see happen, and I think films like this are a fantastic opportunity to do that.
I'm Julie Hesmond-Alsh, and my inspirational woman of Manchester is Annie Horniman. I'm an actor. I'm probably best known for playing Hayley in Coronation Street for many years. I've just done a play at the Royal Exchange where I had to shave my head, hence this rather severe haircut today. Well, Annie Horniman's a really, really interesting character. She wasn't actually born in Manchester. She was born in 1860 in Forest Hill in London, and she came from a very wealthy family, but she was also part of a big tea empire as well, which gave her the nickname later on in life of Horny Bags, which sounds a little bit offensive, but I think it was because of the tea bags. She was brought up in a very strict religious household, and she wasn't allowed to go to the theatre. When she was 15, her governess took her to see a production of The Merchant of Venice, and I think that she was bitten by the theatre bug then, and she never looked back. So she went on to set up the Abbey Theatre in Dublin first of all, and then came to Manchester in the late 19th century and set up in 1908 the Gaiety Theatre in Manchester. And she loved Manchester because she really felt like the people here had a sense of real civic pride, and she wanted very much to champion writers from the area. But really significantly, she got together a group of writers called the Manchester School. She very much wanted theatre to become something that could be enjoyed by the people of Manchester and the surrounds. She was a really eccentric character. She was an independent woman. She never married. She had very exotic clothes sense, and was a big smoker of cigarettes in public places, which at that time was really scandalous. I don't think that Annie is remembered particularly, and that's a very typical tale, unfortunately, for, great women in history. There's a blue plaque in Peter Street where the Gaiety Theatre stood that has her name on it, which is wonderful. The John Rylands Library has all the Annie Horniman papers, but that's not a fact that's particularly well advertised. I think there's still a lot we can learn from her.
My name is Vicky Rosen, and the woman that has given me the greatest inspiration is called Annie Horniman. I didn't know much about her until I was employed as the director of libraries and theatres within the City Council, and her portrait was hung outside the Library Theatre Company, and it's a portrait of her looking very elegant in a brocade dress, and yet when I read about her, and it doesn't seem that that was a really accurate portrait of her, but nevertheless I found her story quite inspiring. Modern day women, I think, still strive for what women through recent ages have, which is to have a much more egalitarian society, one where people of all ages and abilities can thrive. I hope Annie's story lives on through the theatre in Manchester.
I'm Zoe Iqbal, and the woman that has been a great inspiration to me is Margaret Downes. This is the thing, with Margaret Downes, not a lot is known about her. So she went to a protest and she was killed at the Peterloo massacre. And they literally said in the newspaper, we know nothing about her. If you go on Wikipedia, it just says Margaret Downes sabred, which, considering like she kind of died for a cause, all those people risked their lives, but she got killed, and I just think it's not fair that no justice was ever done and we don't even know who she is. Because at that time, if you like protested against anything, especially if you were working class, like you were really demonised. This is way before the suffrage movements. They're not trying to get votes for women, it's more kind of for working class people. With the Peterloo massacre, I've actually got another quote here that I found, and it was from an eyewitness, and they said, the glittering of swords brandished in the sun, and the consideration that those against whom they were raised were fellow countrymen and friends was truly heart-sickening. So to set the scene, between 50 and 80,000 people had gathered all over Lancashire, Manchester. Some people had brought children. This was a planned peaceful protest. The main speaker was a guy called Henry Hunt. Afterwards, he got arrested. These men on horses just suddenly came charging out the crowd. They had swords. 4 women were killed. One woman, unfortunately, her child fell out of her arms and was killed. Learning about Margaret Downes has just, I've got a massive respect for people that are trying to change society. I wonder, like, what would she make of Manchester today? I wonder what brought her to breaking point. I would love her to know that, people think of her and people remember Peterloo, and younger people are learning about it all the time. So, whatever happened to it wasn't in vain.
My name is Rose Marley, and the woman who has most inspired me is Margaret Ashton. Margaret Ashton was originally a suffragette and she was elected to Manchester Council as the first woman councillor for Manchester in 1908. But she was a true pacifist and she had to leave the suffragettes because she was really anti-war. It's incredible that she stood up for what she believed in. Margaret Ashton was important to women, especially in the north, because she was the first person to endorse municipal hospitals for babies and children. And she was an incredible driving force in the well-being of women and families across Manchester, because she acted with honesty, integrity, she had drive and determination, and she didn't let the current thinking get in the way of what she believed to be true. Margaret Ashton was an incredible woman who I admire tremendously for her achievements.